These artifacts, and there's thousands of them, used to decorate the royal palace in the Kingdom of Benin, which was once part of much of what's today Nigeria. They were looted by the British during colonialism, and they are now in all the West's best museums, the British Museum, the Met, and finally some are returning home. Some people might think that the journey of these bronzes ends as soon as they get back to Nigeria. But actually, what the Benin Bronzes have shown is this is just a lot more complicated than anyone expected. These artifacts aren't actually bronze. They're brass plaques, they're carved elephant tusks. They have these almost futuristic designs. To me, they're some of the most exciting art around. So when museums first discussed returning the bronzes, they had one venue in mind, a state-of-the-art museum called the Museum of West African Art. It was going to have security systems, climate control systems. So everyone thought they're going to look after them to the same standards that museums expect and want artifacts to be kept to. And so that's why there was so much excitement. That plan was fine until the Oba, who is the descendant of the people they were stolen from, said, hang on a minute, these belong to me. And in 2023, the Oba secured a presidential decree giving him ownership of all the bronzes. And it sent panic among all the museums who were looking to return these artifacts. The Oba is someone without any official political power, but is still the cultural and religious figurehead in the region. I was given a meeting with him, and he was incredibly forthright about how he felt Western countries had not sort of respected him in returning the bronzes. And he has said anyone who works with the Museum of West African Art will be an enemy. So he's currently working with Nigeria's museum agency, and the majority of the returned bronzes, when they're not on display in the National Museum in Benin City, they're going to be kept in the storage facility. It was sweltering inside, although one of the guards did tell us they had ordered some air conditioning units to make it more room temperate. Some in Western museums might think these aren't as high standards as we would want, but most of the Nigerians I interviewed felt that being told how they should look after artifacts felt like a continuation of colonialism. I think Western museums thought this would be the example that showed how to do it. You know, you just send things back, they go into a museum, end of story, everyone can move on. But this journey is far from over.
That was Alex Macha, a New York Times reporter, speaking about MOWAA and the return of Benin Bronzes, or the Benin artifact. And he also spoke about how he himself visited the Oba of Benin and have a shout out with the Oba of Benin concerning the MOWAA, the controversies of the returned bronzes and all. So I'm not going to jump into many of the things that he said, but I'll just pick out some points to buttress some of the things that I have said to you guys when I was doing some of my findings, reading it out to you guys. He said something that when all the museums were considering returning this artifact to Nigeria, they only have one place in mind, and that one place in mind was the Museum of West African Art, which means it was already discussed already that they are going to have the Museum of West Africa Art. For them to have that one place in mind, which is the Museum of West Africa Art, it means they have already discussed before that that is what they are going to have, the Museum of West Africa Art. He said, but that particular consideration was thwarted because the Benin monarch, the Omonobanedoku Akpolokpolo Oba Eware II, began to have issues with those their consideration. And Oba was saying, this artifact belongs to me. They were taken from my palace. It belongs to me. And that also made the then president, like I read to you guys, Muhammadu Buhari, to sign an official gazette that saw to it that any Benin bronzes that will be returned will be taken straight to the palace of the Oba of Benin as the sole owner of those properties, of those bronzes or those artifacts. So that gazette was signed, and he said something that problem began to arise. after they had those considerations that they are going to return all of those artifacts to the Museum of West Africa Art, problem began to arise when they saw that the Omonoba Nedo laid claim to the artifact that it belongs to him. And that also, he said, he sent panic to all the museums that were planning to return those artifacts back to Nigeria. He said that particular gazette that was signed, and like I told you guys that on 23 of March 2023, that a joint declaration was signed when Lai Mohammed was also present, and also Anila Babok from Germany was also present, and she also signed in that joint declaration that all the artifacts that will be returned to the Oba of Benin. Don't forget, I also told you guys that there was a great issue after that joint declaration was signed. The representative from Nigeria and the representative from the palace of the Oba of Benin, they must have returned back to Nigeria. Issues arose. I told you guys that other bodies came when the representative of Nigeria and the Benin Palace was no longer there. Other bodies came and they disagreed with that joint declaration that was signed. There was another discussion even while the joint declaration was already signed. The people that came were of the opinion that it is not possible that this artifact be returned to just one person, which is the Omonobanedo Uku Akbolokpolo. And I also read to you guys that even some European bodies were also saying and laying claim to be co-owner of the Benin Bronzes, because they were having the mindset that what was used to make this artifact were used from the money that they were using there, which is manilas. Manilas was the money that was using them, and it was that manilas, which is metal, that they minted to make these bronzes. So because of that, they were also laying claim to the Benin Bronzes. I told you guys also. And just like he said there was panic from those other museums. Now, we cannot return these bronzes just for it to go and fall into the hands of the Oba of Benin alone. I read it to you guys. So, where the problem really lies is this. After the joint declaration was signed, the representative of the palace, the representative of Nigeria, they returned back to Nigeria. Behind them, there was another discussions that was held. Discussions that parties came and they disagree that these bronzes cannot be returned to the Oba of Benin to be the sole owner of it. I told you guys that descendants of the slave, people who claim that they were descendants of the slave, were also laying claim to it. If the slave traders can lay claim to it, the descendants of the slave were also laying claim to it. I told you guys also. And one other group that also own a big museums also, we also laying claim to some of these artifacts. And because of that, they said, let none of these artifacts for now be sent to Nigeria. When the representative of the palace and the representative of Nigeria came, they refused to share those arguments that they were having behind their back. They refused to share it with them. And I also read it in one of my videos to you guys that they said they cannot share what third parties said to them to another because it is confidential. I read it to you guys. So that is where there was an issue. There were not a total transparency. And also, Alex Marshall, the journalist, also said something, that he had a chat with the Omonoba Nedoko Oba Ewari II, Oba Gatotbe. He had a chat with him, and the Omonoba Edo made it very clear that even the European people that were saying they want to return some of these artifacts, they were not also open. And to some extent, the Oba said to him that anybody that has anything to do with the Museum of West Africa Art will be an enemy of the palace. The Oba said it to him. You can hear, you can play it back and go and listen to Alex Marshall. He said that the Oba told him that anybody that has anything to do with the Museum of West Africa art will be an enemy of the palace. So I told you guys all of these things, that there were issues. Issues came up. Issues came up. As in, that is, issues came up that even the committee or representative from the palace and of Nigeria do not even know about. For example, when they were having that moving that motion in the Parliament of Germany, the Bundestag of Germany, they were not representative of Nigeria or the representative of Benin Kingdom that was there when they were moving that motion in their parliament. I will play that video for you guys. None of them were there. They were discussing extensively concerning the bronzes. There were arguments. I have read part of it for you guys. None of our representatives were there. And again, I also told you guys that even when Muhammadu Buhari signed the official Gazette, making it that all the artifacts should go to the Oba of Benin, that the Oba of Benin is the owner, that particular day that official Gazette was signed, even the jammers did not get the report on time. It had to take 4 weeks for them to get it. And they got it from just when somebody is reporting news. Not that maybe after Buhari signed it, that somebody take it from Buhari and transport it to maybe the jammers or the people that are concerned to say, this is what has been signed. Whatever you want to return it to the palace. No, nobody went to inform them. They saw it on the news, just like maybe when you enter your Google, you just type Edo News and they just bring us. That was where they saw it from. Not that any representative of Nigeria or a Edo person came to tell them this is what has been signed. It would have been expected that since it was signed on the 23rd of March 2023, on the latest 24th, they should have gotten that particular document. But it was not so. They got to hear it, or as in saw it online, that, okay, this is what is happening. And I will read it for you guys. As at then, those days, there were slaves also from various parts of Africa. You know, Edo was a kind of the home of every black civilization or stuff like that. So that was it. That is the reason why they say, okay, let's make it a Museum of West Africa Act. Let it be for the whole West Africa. So it's totally different from Benin Royal Museum, which will be to the Benin Royal Court. It's totally different. This is a museum of West Africa for the whole West Africa. That is it. And that was the plan. That was the plan. There were discussions that was held. Various black race came and they disagree with the joint declaration that was. I read it to you guys. They disagree with the joint declaration that was signed. And the Europeans also, they were not open to the palace or to Nigerian representative to say after the joint declaration was signed, this is other discussions that came up. They were not open to tell them. I read it to you guys. Go and play my videos back. You see, you will see it. I read it. There were discussions that were held that even the palace or Nigerians were not even aware about, that some of these things happened. And because of that, they say, okay, anything that has to do with repatriation of artifacts, let it just, as if for some time, let it just stop. Let it just stop for some time. And you can see that for some time now, somehow, the repatriation of artifacts is a little bit slow. I don't know if you get. So this is the reason why anything that has to do with this MOWAA needs to be settled out of court and just see how, all parties involved will just come together to see that MOWAA or Benin Royal Museum, if it's turned to Benin Royal Museum, to survive, so that we can have all the bronzes returned. That's my take.